C Orecchio, welcome to the Digestion Sessions.
Always a pleasure, Sean. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for being here. We're talking about Candida, a really hot topic, GI cancer as well, the link between those and how we can get rid of Candida, diet, all of that fun stuff. Candida is such a buzzword, you know, all of these Candida cleanses and all that. And so I feel like this is going to be a really important presentation here because we're going to kind of clear everything up for everybody, right?
Exactly. I'm glad we're doing this because we have to look at it from all angles because it's kind of a fad, the Candida cleanse, the Candida diet, and it's never just about the Candida. So I want to really talk about it kind of broad spectrum so that everyone can really understand what it is, how you get it, how you get rid of it, and all that good stuff.
For those who don't know or those who think they know, what exactly is Candida?
So Candida is a pathogenic yeast. It's basically an opportunistic organism, which means the chips have to be low. Your immunity has to be low from some way, shape, or form, whether that's leaky gut, adrenal fatigue, something else going on to allow this pathogenic yeast to overgrow.
Now, pathogenic yeast means it's not supposed to be there. It's not commensal in the body in the first place?
Well, that's a great question because we all have it. We all have Candida albicans within our intestinal tract, and it's not normally a problem. It's kind of a peaceful coexistence, but when it overgrows, when it proliferates due to a number of environmental circumstances and all things that we're going to talk about, that's when it turns from relatively harmless to pathogenic, and then the more you let it go, the more toxic it becomes over time. Actually, I was reading Jillian Tita's new book, and she talks about the chemicals that it releases, the toxic compounds, is as toxic as nail polish remover if you keep letting the Candida go over time. And so it's a really important topic because a lot of people out there, if you've just been on a broad spectrum antibiotic, even one time in your life, which 90% of us have, and you haven't repopulated the gut with good bacteria, you can be at risk for Candida.
I want to go back to the toxin thing, the whole nail polishing you just mentioned. The body naturally makes toxins by way of the metabolic processes that are going on in there, right? And then the liver kind of cleans stuff out. Now, if you're making toxic Candida toxins, we'll say, can that be a burden to the rest of the body and to the liver?
Yeah, thank you. It's a huge burden, and depending on if you have leaky gut, it's an enormous burden to the liver because now you're giving it double time, the things that it has to metabolize amongst everything else that it has to take care of. And if you have leaky gut, you're making your spleen, which is the spleen is responsible for clearing out foreign invaders in the body, you're making the spleen go, double time. Now instead of 40 hours a week, it's 80 hours a week, and it's doing the job that the digestive system should be doing. So that's a good question.
I imagine that causes my pleasure. I imagine that causes problems in the long run, of course. Now tell us, how does one actually get Candida overgrowth?
Yeah, well, I want to start with the antibiotics. So if you're going to kill the good bacteria in your intestinal tract, then you're going to allow this overgrowth. You're going to allow the imbalance. And so there's two types of antibiotics. There's bacteriostatic, which if you get sick, you take the bacteriostatic and it knocks down the bad guys, but it doesn't wipe everything out. And if there's any way that you can go towards those, they're better because it doesn't damage the immune system and wipe everything out indiscriminately. Then there's bactericidal antibiotics like the Cipros and the full spectrum of we just have to knock this out, and they knock out good, bad, and indifferent, and those are the heavy hitters that start to penetrate the GI mucosa, and so that's how antibiotic over time can kill good gut flora. So now we're not digesting our food well. If you have enough good gut flora, it will manufacture all of your B vitamins. We're not manufacturing B vitamins anymore. Energy metabolism goes downhill, the adrenals go on the fritz, the thyroid goes on the fritz, right? It's never just about one thing, it's this whole functional medicine approach. And so, you really have to do your cleanup work if you're going to take antibiotics. I am not anti-Western medicine by any means. I'm just about the marriage and the best of both worlds and understanding what to do so you don't have to do so much cleanup work later on.
I want to make sure we didn't lose anybody. You said gut mucosa, the antibiotics penetrate the gut mucosa. What's the gut mucosa?
Okay, so that's a great question. It's basically the immune system inside your gut. You know, when you get sick and you have to blow your nose, the body is wrapping up pathogens in mucus and transporting it out. And the same thing happens within the small intestine, within the GI tract, is that you have this mucosal lining that is there to protect you, and it will wrap up pathogens and transport them out of the body. So if you're going to take something that's going to get rid of that mucosal lining, now you have no defense. So now anything opportunistic or pathogenic that comes in will stay. And that's why most MDs, I remember, I had Candida so bad as I was figuring out this process years ago when I first got into this field, and I started talking about this to my MD, and he said, well, maybe in your world that happens, but not here, because he's thinking, well, you have, the body's so intelligent, you have this mucosal lining, it's going to take care of it. But so many things we do on a daily basis get rid of that mucosal lining, and that's when we really get into trouble, and the game of biochemistry works against us.
What are some other ways people can get Candida overgrowth?
Yeah, so too much alcohol, too much caffeine.
Why are you pointing at me? Too much alcohol?
Well, we're good friends, No, I'm just kidding. So
what are you talking about?
Alcohol thins the lining of the gut, that thins the mucosal lining. I know you do your bone broth, you're good, you're straight.
Yeah.
And then too much caffeine, right? It's like, it's all about that whole, when we get stuck in that cycle, and that goes with chronic prolonged stress. Life gets busy, we start our day, we kind of keep ourselves going with coffee, we calm ourselves down with alcohol. I know a lot of people, and so many of my clients have done that, and then you compromise yourself over time. And so if something is going to happen and it's already there starting to proliferate, you feed the fire. And so I want to kind of dispel the myth that guys don't have to worry about this, because it's a human problem. It's not just a female problem, but females have Candida more than men because they have to go through a couple of different things that men don't have to go through. So if you've had a C-section, if you've had a baby and you've had a C-section, that baby is at risk for Candida, and then so is the mother. The baby is not getting all of its good flora that it normally would have if it came out vaginally, and then the mom is getting so many intravenous antibiotics. So you have to do cleanup work after that to clean up postpartum and everything, where you can get hormonal balance quicker. And women also take birth control pills. Birth control pills over time will kill the good gut flora, and they will also leach your B vitamins. So then there's kind of two ways that you can get Candida, right? You can you don't get enough B vitamins, the adrenals are suffering, the thyroid is suffering, and then you kill your good gut flora, you've got this Candida, it wants to live, it's opportunistic, and it starts to overgrow. So that's the reason why women have it a little bit more, but chronic prolonged stress we all have to deal with that at some point in time. So
stress, antibiotics, caffeine, excessive alcohol consumption, birth control pills, right? Now I want to do a quick review in terms of the antibiotics. So the good bacteria is there to keep the yeast in check, because you need yeast, it does important things, but taking the antibiotics wipes out the bacteria, and then the yeast just kind of go wild. Like, parents aren't home, let's go ahead and throw a party.
Yeah, exactly. But it allows other different parasites and pathogens to come in and to stay. So you got it. Here's the thing, bacteria is the oldest living organism on this planet. They're 10 trillion years old, and we're covered in this invisible body armor of bacteria that informs our immune system. It basically keeps us alive. We have had this 100-year war on all bacteria, and so that has really caused a whole litany of problems. Whether it's antibiotics, whether it's pasteurizing everything you come in contact with, and we're just not getting enough good bacteria.
Whether it's not breastfeeding anymore.
People aren't breastfeeding anymore. It's like, yeah, that's a great point. It's like, where do we get our chance to build up the immune system?
I've Googled symptoms of Candida, and it seems like it's everything under the sun, right? What are those main ones?
Well, you're right, it can be nebulous. Another cause of getting Candida is overconsumption of sugar or refined foods, and that is also a symptom, the real intense sugar cravings. Like I'm talking, you're gonna go in your pajamas at 11 or 12 o'clock at night and go get a Chipwich at 7-Eleven, right? And that's the type where it's bigger than you. I say to my clients, and if this resonates with you, then you know what I'm talking about. You're like, I can't think about anything else until I go and I get this sugar and I get this need met. That's an organism inside of you that's bigger than you, that's opportunistic. It wants to stay alive and it needs to be fed. So intense sugar cravings. Mental fogginess is a huge one where you feel like there's a screen in front of you and you can't quite think straight.
Is that toxins?
It's a combination of things. So it's toxins, but also when you have Candida, you can't convert to T3, your main thyroid hormone that gives you energy. And so that will feed your brain and give you that mental clarity that you're looking for. And that's why you can't just address the Candida. It's that functional medicine triangle. It's the digestive system, it's the thyroid, it's the adrenal glands, and it has to be addressed all at once.
I want to stop you right there. So T4 is the inactive thyroid hormone, needs to be converted to T3, which is the active thyroid hormone, and the Candida gets in the way of that happening, which can cause the brain issues.
Exactly.
Okay, continue.
T4 cannot convert to
Gotcha.
T3.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, so there you have the mental fog. Or like you said, Sean, toxins. Constipation is huge with Candida. People who have chronic constipation that they can't get a hold of because they're not digesting their food and they don't have enough good bacteria to kind of keep everything moving.
Candida are making the toxins. Toxins are slipping through the intestinal mucosa, the lining there, over-toxifying the body. I have to imagine there's an inflammation thing there too.
Yes.
Yeah, and the inflammation's getting to the brain and causing fogginess as well.
Exactly, yeah, it's the whole gut-brain connection. It's inextricably connected. So yeah, what's happening is you have this inflamed environment and yeah, whatever slips through the intestinal barrier goes directly through the brain.
What are some other common symptoms?
So many symptoms, sinus infections. So a lot of people don't connect Candida, but chronic sinus infections, that's typical of Candida, or just a damp condition within the body. So if you have nail fungus, something that's mold, fungus type related, skin issues, when I see people with eczema or psoriasis, I'll definitely check them and see if Candida is one of their main issues.
Toenail fungus, jock itch, things of that sort. When I was working with clients, I would see that all the time. Now, what happens first? Is it like the toenail fungus, or is that like a internal intestinal Candida yeast overgrowth that becomes systemic?
So it's a chicken or egg issue, really case specific to who you're working with. The vast majority of the time, yeah, this is going to start with an overgrowth in the intestinal tract, and then you're getting bloating, gas, constipation, then this idea of leaky gut ensues, and so then, these toxins are slipping through, and then it's going to start to manifest within the skin in some way, shape, or form, or with the nails, and you only have so many ways to detoxify, right? Like through the bowels, through the skin, and through the breath, through deep breathing. And so if you're not eliminating through the bowels, the body wants to keep you safe, it's going to eliminate through the skin.
Same thing with a yeast overgrowth, like a vaginal yeast overgrowth. That can be an
Sure.
intestinal infection.
Vaginal yeast infections are a huge sign that you have Candida. If they're recurring, not 100% of the time though, it could be localized based upon the pH of the vagina getting off and that causing a whole litany of things.
Going back to the brain, depression, anxiety, those involved here?
Yeah, they're huge. They really are huge. And I've had clients coming to me being like, I've been on antidepressants for years and they're not working anymore. Well, you always go to the digestive system because if you have Candida or any number of pathogens, then you can't use your B vitamins and you're not manufacturing enough of the feel-good neurotransmitter serotonin. And so that's the idea, is clean up the gut to heal the brain. And I know you've done a lot on the gut-brain connection, and
Absolutely.
it's crucial.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
Dr. Karazian rocked that one. He did, he covered the whole thing. As did Dr. Saska as well. He talked a lot about that. Now, a few of our presenters have talked about bacteria eating our food, right? And you talked about sugar cravings, so I'm going to assume that our Candida overgrowth can eat the food that we consume, or is it just sugar?
Candida needs sugar, to thrive, and it feeds off of fermentation. And that's really, we're going to pull this idea of, if you have systemic yeast overgrowth and you get rid of it and you clean up the digestive system, you slash your lifetime chances of cancer by 75%.
Really?
Which is huge. And it's funny how all the studies are now coming full circle. So have you heard of Otto Warburg?
Yes.
Yeah.
1930 something Nobel Prize winner for cancer, feeds on the fermentation of sugar, but unfortunately cancer docs tend to feed their patients Ensure, which is full of sugar, which is so backwards.
I love that you know who he is. Of course you know who he is. But this guy, I mean, way back in 1931, he kind of had this all down, and it's coming full circle now, but he did his studies, the metabolism of tumors, and that when you replace inside the GI tract, we need oxygen. Every cell in the body needs oxygen. You get to that tipping point of you snuff out oxygen by 60%, that creates an acidic tissue that creates cancer. So we want to remove the fermentation and replace oxygen. And Candida feeds on fermentation, which is why it's so important to figure out if you have it and to eradicate it and take all the steps to make sure it doesn't come back again. And I just think, I mean, his work, I mean, at that time was he's like a revolutionary, right? And now, fast forward, you know, almost 100 years later, and you've got the Italian oncologist, do you know Simoncini in Italy, who's doing a similar concept, but he's taking the idea of pH and treating a lot of different GI cancer with bicarbonate therapy. And he's just trying to get oxygen back into the cells and get rid of fermentation.
That's interesting.
It's almost like so simple, right? And we make things so complicated. And the average, you know, when you're healing from GI cancer, the average cost of that is $350,000. And he's doing that for, you know, less than a tenth of that.
Bicarbonate.
Helping people naturally. There's a lot of controversy around it. Of course, there would be, but his research is fantastic. And so when I'm having somebody test to see if they have Candida, I also have them do a pH test because I want to see like what's going on in the acid-alkaline balance of the body.
pH test done how?
Well, I have them get the strips, and they do for 6 days. They keep a pen and paper in the bathroom, and they test the pH of both their urine and saliva before they eat or drink anything and first thing in the morning. So, and they concurrently do that. Do you want me to tell you about my DIY Candida test?
Yeah, go for it.
So they concurrently do that with doing a DIY at-home spit test for Candida. So I've run the antibody test in stool and blood and saliva, and I've run them concurrently with this easy-free at-home spit test, and 9 times out of 10 they match. So what you would do is you fill up a glass of water, you fill it up halfway, you work up a dime-sized amount of saliva, and you spit in the glass. And you do that again before you brush your teeth, you eat or drink anything, and you measure that for 6 days. And I want to know, does the saliva sink to the bottom? Does it grow legs, or does it stay floating on top? And if it sinks to the bottom, you know, there's more of them than you, and you really need to look into this and clean it up. And if it kind of grows legs, then you have to take care of it. It means the yeast is out of balance, but maybe it's not going to be such a huge road back to balance. Stays floating on top, you don't have to worry about it. But there's one caveat to that. You have to have no dairy for those 6 days because dairy thickens the mucosal membrane, and that might give you a false positive and make you sink if you don't have Candida, as will dehydration. So to make sure you're hydrated, and which I would say about 1 liter of water for every 50 pounds of body weight, 34 ounces for every 50 pounds of body weight during these 6 days, and then you test your pH. And if you see that, you know, you're growing legs over 6 days, or you're sinking, and then your pH is kind of up and down, or usually very acidic, no matter what you do. Oh, you can't just have some greens powder and some minerals and fix it. I always say you can't plant flowers in a junkyard, right? You got to take care of the underlying thing, and then you start to see both of them regulating, and it's a great marker of progress. And so I love using pH as a tool.
Easy peasy. Go back to pH testing. What are we looking for with those strips?
Yeah, so you're getting these hydron strips that you can get anywhere from Amazon to the health food store, and you're testing the pH of your urine and saliva, and you're looking. So basically, we have to maintain a super narrow window between 7.25 and 7.45 of our blood pH. If we go outside of that pH, even a little bit, we would die. It's really just not an option. And so what we're looking at to see, okay, well, let's check the pH of your urine and saliva to see how hard is your body working to keep you alive, let alone allow for vibrant health, right? And so we want to make it easier on the body to create that balanced chemistry. And when you're talking about cancer in general, cancer can't exist in a balanced state, only in an acid state. So you're going to put that strip in your mouth, and you're going to write down, you know, where you are for 6 days, first thing in the morning, and then first and second morning urine. So if you wake up, let's say between 5 and 8 a.m., you wake up to use the restroom and then you go back to bed, you would test it then, go back to bed, wake up and test it again.
I understand that the pH of the saliva and the urine and the blood are different. Yes. So what are the numbers that we're looking for?
Well, so you're looking to keep your pH within that window, around 7.0. If you can get your pH to 7.0, you're in business.
For each of them, it doesn't matter if it's blood or urine or saliva, just as long as you're staying in that range.
Well, the second morning urine to me is the biggest indicator, because if you're sleeping well, then your body's collecting acid from the joints at night and you're going to eliminate. The first time you eliminate in the morning, your first morning urine as it processes through the kidneys is going to be more acidic, and then the second morning urine is going to be more balanced. So that is almost an indicator of how well the cleanup system is working while you're sleeping, and so that second morning urine is what we're really looking to get in that window of about 7.0. Because if you're acidic, then the body there's no other option, right? The body's going to pull minerals from the bones, donate it to the blood to keep it within that range, and osteoporosis, and you need minerals for alkalinity. It's like a snowball effect.
So, big question for you.
Yeah.
How do you get rid of Candida overgrowth? What's the real way that actually works long term?
Yeah, I got it. We got it. I mean, after so many different trial and error and having to do this myself 3 times, I've been studying this guy for, 8 years now. And so you have to starve it with diet. You cannot feed it anymore, and then you kill it with a carefully crafted cocktail of supplements that don't just address the Candida. So here's the process, and then I'll take you through what the diet and what the supplements are. But basically, you starve it, then I use an antifungal rotation every 4 days, because Candida wants to stay alive, so it's going to morph forms if you use the same, which is where we go wrong in Western medicine, where you just use nystatin or you just use one thing, chase it back, here we go, great, 3 months later you have the same problem and you're on this merry-go-round. So you shift your antifungals, but you use a carefully crafted antifungals that are going to also help with other root cause factors, so underlying viruses that might be active instead of dormant. And sometimes, we have to also look for other factors. We need to use something that will kill pathogens as well, because sometimes if you have Candida, you're definitely going to have some sort of parasite that goes with that. So the idea is you get rid of it. Then, to make sure it doesn't come back, you have to heal and seal the lining of the gut. You have to heal the leaky gut. You have to repopulate with good bacteria, balance stomach acid, and then I call my cleanse the finishing touches. We take care of whatever's left with the thyroid and the adrenals. And that's the platform to get rid of it in a way where it never comes back. So it's not just about the Candida. And I have to mention that a huge underlying cause that happens in about 10% of cases is heavy metal toxicity. And so the body will produce Candida to keep you safe from the negative, dangerous effects of methylmercury. And so that is, in the beginning of my practice, I would run into, what's going on? The Candida is now proliferating worse. These people are losing their sense of taste, and it's an underlying heavy metal, because the body doesn't make a mistake. It's always trying to keep you safe. So within my cleanse, you can figure out if you have heavy metal toxicity, and you have to concurrently start to get rid of that at the same time. Otherwise, you could do more harm than good.
Okay, walk us through this step by step. I believe you said that the first step is to starve.
Starve it. You got to get the sugar out 500%. You are going about as sugar-free as you possibly can, and you're going gluten-free, you're going dairy-free. So you're kind of going paleo-esque, but we need to talk about carbohydrates as we go through this, and then no fermentation. So 0 fermentation, meaning you're not having any soy sauce, you're not having any alcohol, you're not having any vinegar, you're having nothing that's been fermented, you're not having any kombucha. My people who come, they say, oh, I'm good, I drink like 3 kombuchas a day. They're addicted to it because it's feeding the yeast.
You just give me a hard time about that.
Do you know of anybody? Oh, when we first met, remember I said, do you have Candida?
I don't have no Candida, I just like kombucha.
The people who drink like 3 a day, and it makes you giddy afterwards, that's how you know you're feeding something else. So
okay.
You run with that. And
so no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, no fermented foods, no kombucha. Is this really hard to do?
Yeah, it is. And nothing about me and the whole journey is about willpower, denial, or deprivation, except my Candida cleanse. Because if you do this right, you'll change your health for the rest of your life. And it's anywhere between 6 and 10 weeks you have to do it. But if you're going to slash your lifetime chances of cancer by 75%, I think it's worth it. It's boring, okay? It's 40% high quality pasture raised animal products, animal meat. You have to be careful when you eat out. You don't want to make it worse by eating polluted meat, animals that have antibiotics in their feed or hormones. And then 40% non-starchy vegetables. And then 10% nuts and seeds and fruit. So nuts and seeds can be mold forming. You have to keep them in the fridge. And so you can't go nuts with the almond butter. The people who are like, I can eat almond butter, the whole jar of it. It's feeding that damp condition within the body. 1 serving of fruit a day. Low glycemic, low sugar fruit. It's either berries, any type of organic berry, or a green apple. That's pretty much you have to choose. And then, 10% complex carbs, and the carbohydrates that you choose are very specific. So in my cleanse, some people can do brown rice and quinoa. Some people can do grains and be very successful on the cleanse, and some people can't do grains at all. And I'm really excited to talk about this because there was an article in the Healthy Home Economist that talked about why the Candida diet doesn't work. And they brought up a really good point, because if you have Candida, you're inflamed, right? Your gut is inflamed. The enterocytes, those cells that are basically responsible for giving you enzymes that digest carbohydrates, they cannot digest them. So that's why if there are grains involved in the Candida diet, you're actually, if they don't digest them, putrefied food is going to be in there, creates fermentation, the problem gets worse. But there's a lot of people that aren't going to go completely grain-free, so it's like, well, how do I set those guys up for success? So if you soak your gluten-free grains and you have them in moderation before you cook them, then you're going to get rid of the enzyme inhibitors. You'll be able to activate the enzymes, so it makes it much easier to digest, and you can take digestive enzymes with them so that you can still be successful, right? Because it's the idea of a disaccharide or a double sugar. The enterocytes, their job is to break it down into a single sugar so you can use that food as energy. So it might need some assistance, and that's how we kind of get around that issue.
The diet that you're talking about, is this something that you just go cold turkey and you just start doing tomorrow or today, or do you kind of ease people into doing this?
Well, everyone's different, and so I kind of evaluate where they are. Most of the time, it's just a deep dive. Let's roll up our sleeves, let's do this thing, get it taken care of. But depending on how bad you have Candida and how bad your adrenals or thyroid or anything else might be, whatever other issues you have going on, you can have die-off symptoms pretty bad, because now you have this war and this guy is trying to stay alive, and as it's dying off and getting through your bloodstream, you feel like you have the flu. You're breaking out. And so I try to prep my clients for the worst, but I'd say maybe, in 400 people I've taken through individually in private practice through this, 5 have been like, I feel so bad. So you have to set yourself up and at least have 3 or 4 days where life is a bit mellow to set yourself up for success in case you start to get these die-off symptoms.
What are your tips for the carb cravings that they're going to have? Because they're already having sugar cravings because they have the yeast, and now they're completely off sugar, and it's 8 o'clock at night and they want to rob a candy store. What do you recommend?
Yeah, so you set yourself up for success. And when I do the cooking classes with clients, I'm using the dark liquid stevia in almost everything, from their salad dressing to their turkey chili to everything that's already savory, so that we're staging the sweet flavor in their diets. They don't get that, I'm going to go rob a candy store. But then, we have meal plans and we have recipes. So I have them make I wanted to make it for you today, actually, next time. It's called cashew cake batter pudding. Tastes like Golden Spoon's cake batter, and it's like super Candida friendly. And that's kind of have them make that. I have them make a coconut flour lemon cake. I have them make a couple different recipes and just keep them in the freezer so that they can have a few bites. It's like so much of this health game is preparation and planning for success.
So for how long is someone going to be on this diet?
Anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks. It really depends on the results of their saliva and their pH test and what else they have going on. You know, how the health of their immunity and their adrenals, their thyroid.
So when they finish this diet and they're on it for 6 to 10 weeks and they go back to their regular diet, what's the relapse rate on that? Because I'm gonna imagine if they've had Candida overgrowth, that they probably have a greater propensity than the next person to have it come back.
You really only, if you do it right and you heal the leaky gut afterwards and you really build up the system, you're not going to crave sugar. So there actually isn't a very high relapse rate at all if you kind of complete the entire process. If you just focused on the Candida diet and supplements, you don't do the rest of the work, the relapse rate is much higher. And so, yeah, you've kind of healed the system and you keep it in balance. If you go back on antibiotics, you don't take your probiotics, you don't do the leaky gut formulas concurrently, then the relapse rate is higher.
Let's get to the other stuff. So supplements, talk about those.
Yeah, so the idea is, well, my plan, which has worked really well, is I use diatomaceous earth. Do you know what that is?
I've heard about that.
Yeah, they're old tiny fossils. They've been around, much longer than we have. And they act like razor blades to the Candida, but they don't harm the human body. You obviously have to use food grade diatomaceous earth. People listening, they probably think, I clean my pool with that stuff. So food grade. And what it does, it kind of like slices the exoskeleton of the Candida, right? It can open up, and then I use bentonite clay to catch it and start to catch the other poisons and toxins within the system. Tons of water, tons of both soluble and insoluble fiber, so you can now move this poison out of the body. If your channels of elimination aren't open, you get Herxheimer's response.
When you say channels of elimination, you mean what?
If you're not eliminating, if you're not having like regular bowel movements throughout the day and you start to do the Candida diet, it's going to be a lot worse. So you go into Herx response, which is like a 10-car pileup on the freeway, because you have to make sure that things are flowing. So step one, those guys doing the diet, and that's kind of clearing it out. It's a sludgy cocktail that I have people drink throughout the day, and then I rotate antifungals with every single meal. And my favorite, that you cannot do a Candida cleanse without Palo d'Arco. And I know we talked about this plenty of times before.
In tea form or?
I have people do the tea form. It's stronger. I have them do 3 to 4 tea bags if they can, throughout the day. Steep a really tough cup of tea, fill it up with water, and then just sip that with your meals throughout the day. And so Palo d'Arco, especially if that's the one you start with, and I would actually continue it if you have autoimmune issues with lupus, fibromyalgia, I would continue that after. It's also going to be an antiviral, so you see how this is really comprehensive. You do that for 4 days, and then you put that on the shelf, and then you move to oregano oil. Then we have a heavy hitter antifungal, so maybe it's not just yeast, it's mold, it's fungus, and you need something that's going to take care of everything, plus also going to start to kill other parasites. So my Candida cleanse will take care of about 70% of pathogens as well.
Oregano oil, like dropper form, or are you taking capsules?
I have people take capsules, right? Otherwise it's going to taste like you had a pizza for the rest of the day. And so they take the capsules with meals, and you do that for 4 days, and then you switch to grapefruit seed extract, which is going to help to build the system. It will help you transport L-carnitine. It's going to help with cellular oxygenation because we're trying to oxygenate. It's going to be supportive to the adrenals and the immune system. And then, so you keep kind of shifting after that. And then olive leaf extract is incredible. And that's another one that comes in at the end because it's also antiviral, antifungal, and building to the immune system.
And for how long are they doing this for, the supplement routine?
So this is a 16-day rotation, and the bare minimum you're doing is 2 rotations, so 32 days. Most people will need 3 or 4 rotations, and that's how you kind of customize within there.
So in review, diatomaceous earth, bentonite clay, lots of water. You said fiber as well, right?
Fiber as well.
In what form?
Well, you want soluble and insoluble fiber. I'll have people maybe soak chia seeds and then drink the water that they soak them in throughout the day because you want to be, have it binding to things.
Gotcha, and that keeps things moving. Yeah, gotcha. Palo d'Arco tea, 4 days, oregano oil, 4 days, grapefruit extract, 4 days, olive leaf extract, 4 days, and do 2 rotations of that. So 16 days times 2.
You got it.
Perfect.
Grapefruit seed extract, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, minimum, bare minimum of 2 rotations, 32 days. Most people are going to be 3 or 4 rotations.
Okay, what's next?
So what's next after that is, you have to go in and you check it. You start to know you're making progress, and then I forgot one. You got to take Saccharomyces boulardii. It's a yeast-eating strain of probiotic that I have people take at night, because you have to start to eat up that excess yeast as well. But you have to take your probiotic away from your antifungals, because your antifungals are there to kill stuff, and it will kill the good bacteria that you're adding in.
That makes sense.
So yeah, you got to bring that in. It's a heavy hitter. I affectionately call it Sac B. And then once you start to, you get this cleanup process, then you go in and you heal the tight junctions, like leaky gut. You think of the lining of your small intestine like a brick wall. You still have mortar missing, right? You have to go in like caulking and seal that up. So I use any combination of things from marshmallow root to slippery elm, and I use a combination of formulas. Also turmeric with black pepper. You want to slash inflammation, really start to heal. But my whole thing is use food as your medicine. So the entire way we're going through, they're adding in things like bone broth, or I use the nopal cactus if people can find it. Okra.
Nopalis?
Yeah.
My grandma used to make that for us. It was amazing.
She did, yeah. It's like super popular among the Mexican community, and my clients, that's how I learned about it. They would be like, what about this? Does this work? Bring me soup.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Throw it on the grill.
Do you feel like that's this whole healing the gut thing, is that something that a lot of people overlook?
Yeah, well, 90% of the mainstream, the Western society, overlooks it, and digestion is the foundation of our entire health, human health. If that's not working, nothing else is going to work. And so fix the digestive system, get it functioning really well, the majority of issues will start to go away. And that's the thing as well. I hear from my clients, and they can get off of their medication, they feel better. Not only do they have more energy, and the bloating, all that stuff is gone in a way that they trust, that's permanent, but they say I have more peace and confidence than I've ever had, because here's the gut-brain connection. And life is just looking shinier. You have to take care of the digestive system. Repopulate, we figure out, depending on what else is there, with the right amount, the right dose of a multi-strain probiotic. And then hydrochloric acid's a big deal. Got to make sure you're producing enough HCl, because HCl will kill pathogens. And a lot of us Americans, with this acid-alkaline balance and all of these acid blockers, again, we're lowering our defense.
Well, how do you make sure that you're making enough HCl? What do you do?
Food is medicine is my favorite way. So I use something called a ginger pickle. And on my cleanse, I have people peel an entire root of ginger and shred it with a carrot shaver, and then squeeze the juice of an entire lemon and add some sea salt. And they kind of make a pickle out of it and put it in the fridge. And I have them, with their meals, have just one bite. Kind of chew it. You don't have to swallow the fiber of the ginger, but that's going to train your body to start making more of its own hydrochloric acid.
So we've covered the diet and the supplementation, the healing the gut. You were also talking about healing the adrenals, the thyroid, doing that cleanup work. Talk about that.
Right, so once you heal the gut, everything else can start to function and be in place. So that's the right point where I would either have people test their thyroid by way of at-home temperature pulse test to see where they are, and then boost their thyroid, or they would go and get labs run, do a full thyroid panel and see exactly where their thyroid was, make sure they're converting now T4 to T3 so that they can use it as energy. Maybe run a cortisol panel and kind of do the finishing touches to strengthen the rest of the system, and using antioxidants and all that good stuff, the right amount of carbs. And that's kind of like, it's a beautiful picture, because it's a complete picture. And then people can kind of go about their life, live their 80-20 rule, have the things that they enjoy.
At-home pulse test, what's that?
So if you don't want to go and run all these expensive lab tests, you can take your temperature and your pulse 3 to 5 times a day and see where your thyroid is at, and it's quite accurate. So first thing in the morning, before you go to bed, 20 minutes after each meal, you check your temperature and pulse, and you want to, if your temperature goes down, that means that meal didn't quite work for you. It didn't boost your metabolism. It didn't help, convert. And so that helps me figure out how many carbohydrates somebody needs and what's really going on. Yeah. So that maybe you do that at home, and if it comes back off, then maybe then you go and you get the blood panel done.
This seems like such a process, like it's going to take forever, right? And requires a lot of willpower and whatnot. Is there anything that people can do to kind of speed things up a little bit? Sure,
there's alternative therapies. You can get as aggressive as you want to get. And so in my cleanse, in my cleanse that I take people through, I give them options. So their options are, you can do coffee enemas, or go and get colonics, or you can do oil pulling, which is going to pull bad bacteria out of the system. You can go to an infrared sauna. You can kind of take this as aggressive or as gentle as you want, based upon kind of your emotional approach, if it's overwhelming or not.
Coffee enemas, how do you do that and how often?
Well, I would have people do coffee enema at least once a week. Yeah, so you will, you'll get an enema bucket, $5 off of Amazon, and you'll get a clean, very clean coffee, and you'll brew coffee, and you give yourself an enema, you hold it for 15 minutes. It's perfect. That's what happens is when you give yourself a coffee enema, when coffee hits the liver, it forces it to do a hiccup, which releases a ton of bile. And so that's really helpful, because as you're cleansing, this can be hard on the liver and on the kidneys, our elimination organs, especially if you're getting rid of metals at the same time. So that can really help speed up the process. And so Natural News has a great way that lays it out exactly how to do it. You can just Google coffee enemas, Natural News. And
Infrared sauna, how often?
an infrared sauna once, twice, 3 times a week. You can go up to 3 times a week. And I would say at least 20 to 30 minutes in there, 2 to 3 times a week. That's going to improve cellular energy. When they measure the toxins that come out from regular exercise or from sweating, you have an infinite amount higher toxins in the sweat from the infrared sauna. So, right? You're getting it out through the skin.
Gotcha. What's the difference between an infrared sauna and a regular sauna?
It just, the way an infrared sauna will basically heat you up from the inside out, so your organs are detoxifying, and then those toxins are coming out through the skin. A regular sauna in the gym will heat you up from the outside in. So you're just you're getting a good sweat. It's still good for you, but not that infrared, that technology.
This has been really good stuff. I kind of feel like we skimmed over GI cancer. I want to get deeper into that. Tell us more.
In order to feed cancer cells, you need fermentation and you need sugar. And that takes away oxygen. In order to feed healthy cells, you need oxygen. And so that's where this whole thing comes into play with Candida. You want to slash fermentation and sugar as much as possible.
Could it really be that simple though? Like if someone's got cancer, it's really as simple as, hey, I'm not gonna eat any sugar or anything that turns into sugar, so I don't feed it.
No, it's not, no. And healthy people get cancer. Cancer is a really complicated issue and situation, and I'm not gonna profess to be an expert in it, but in terms of prevention of cancer, this is really what we're talking about. Like once you already have cancer, you're moving into much deeper levels depending on what stage it is. But this is really more about prevention and not getting to that 60% flip point, right? You want to keep your cells as healthy as you can. And so really, I mean, we talk about sugar ad nauseum. We want to cut the sugar. We've gone from a 7-ounce soda in 1955 to a 128-ounce big gulp, here we are today. So we're drinking 17 times the amount that we would have drank back then. We have so many things working against us, and there's so many diet and lifestyle factors within our control. When I talk about cancer prevention, food combining is really important. Never, ever, ever, ever combine carbohydrate with fruit. And so that they react. So let's say no, and my clients, they'll say, what? No bananas in the oatmeal, no blueberries in the cereal, nothing that's on every TV commercial that we've been doing since the beginning of time.
Is this a general recommendation, or is this
every human being should never combine carbs with fruit. Their digestion rate is too similar. So basically the fruit is going to digest quickly, and it should go first. It's its rightful place to go first. But when we combine it with fruit, bananas, and oatmeal, the carbohydrate will cut it off and will go first. And now what does the fruit do? It putrefies and it ferments, and it makes the problem worse. And anyone who struggles with gas, that's their first thing that they should do, is that cardinal rule of food combining and a cancer prevention food combining rule.
Okay, in terms of oxygen, because you really emphasize that, exercise, yoga, deep breathing, talk about those.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, and so we all have certain stagnant parts of our body, and we all have places where we might be more prone to cancer than other places, and you can only do so much with diet that you have to move the body. You have to get energy moving, and so that's where massage or lymphatic release can come in. Exercise, yoga. I'm so proud of you for being so into yoga because you're sweating as well, and you're also alkalizing. One of the best ways to alkalize the body is through deep breathing, and that's why people who do yoga for years look younger, feel younger. It's all about cellular energy and cellular metabolism. So yeah, you have to, it's a balance, right? And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about emotional roots of things like repressed anger, and we're not just physical beings. Yes, you got to take care of that functional medicine stuff and the diet stuff, but you really have to take responsibility and accountability for our emotional process in life and make sure we're moving through that in an efficient manner and digesting those emotions.
Krista, this has been great. From what I understand, you have a online program where you walk people through this whole process of getting rid of Candida, right?
Yes, exactly. I have a 6 to 10 week Candida cleanse and digestive overhaul. So the same process that we kind of talked about today, if it's confusing, overwhelming, and you need someone to tell you exactly what to eat, when to eat, and why, and that can help you really customize and dosages, everything to set you up for success. That is working really well because I've taken so many private clients through this process that all of a sudden there was no more space for that. And so then I started taking groups through it, and now this 10-week overhaul.
And our viewers can learn more about that at thewholejourney.com.
You can go to thewholejourney.com, you can find it, or you can find it right at twjcandidacleanse.com.
That works. And talk about your product swaps. Those are really cool.
Yeah, so I never want people, right? Denial, deprivation, willpower. So it's like an eat this, not that. And so really for everything, your treats, your snacks, your whatever you're used to eating, I give you a healthy upgrade that's taste approved. It tastes the same, but no negative interaction in the body.
Yeah,
and so we all have to make this work in our lives. We can talk about it all day long, but what are you actually going to eat?
Very cool. Krista, thanks so much.
Of course.